I think you ought to say something back to that, because we seem to have snuck a fundamental objective truth back in. Have you any reply to that?
Everyone who's got a view about how to change the world will tell you that they've worked out the truth. And be very careful of every one of them.
But just to be provocative, Nabi, I'm going to sort of turn to you on this. So obviously I'm sat with two philosophers and a political economist, and you all seem quite comfortable with the idea that it's an intellectually responsible project to accept uncertainty, provisionality, to search for a range of different metaphors. But actually, right now, at this moment in the world, and for the majority of people who perhaps aren't practicing philosophers or what have you, is that not slightly a dangerous strategy? I mean, if people don't feel that something's the truth, is there not something pragmatic to being able to say to people, look, this is true, you should do this because ... Do we take a risk if we just concentrate all our efforts on becoming comfortable with uncertainty?
I think it's a great question, because I think part of the nature of the crisis is we've got used to a language, a political narrative that deals in false necessities and unsafe certainties, right? We live in a world in which we think there is a truth, and if you go against it, you break some predetermined economic law, even though those don't exist. What holds us apart from the post-war era, and I think the 30s and the war taught people of left and right, that we live in an imperfect and imperfectible world, and a world of uncertainty. And so there was a kind of intellectual humility on the left and the right about the fact that we're trying to make ourselves more resilient in an uncertain world, rather than trying to build a whole utopia. So what strikes me as realist about democracy, about liberal democracy, is that it's very consistent with a philosophy of science that says, particularly in the social world, there's no single narrative, right? There is no governing science. And so it's very consistent and, in principle, brilliant in terms of its protections for individual freedom, to have a system of representation that is then mediated through parties that ideally would understand themselves in non-utopian ways, that they don't have final answers, in order to mediate the changing world that they're trying to deal with. And I think one of the problems is, so that's what I think philosophically, politically, and this is picking up on a preoccupation of Robin's, which I think is a really important one, which is that in a realistic sense, we have dying neoliberal utopian parties that are functionally extinct in terms of having any answers, but they're at the height of their structural power. And so, as Richard Lowenthal wrote about the Soviets in the 1960s, they are hunting around for alternative narratives that continue to justify their power, new combat tasks.
Sustainable development goals.
So, how can we remobilize our support? We can't go to economic mobilization anymore because it lacks all credibility. But nationalist and racist mobilizations are a way of sustaining those interests, but now under kind of different narrative forms. So it is incredibly incumbent on opponents of those parties to be able to narrate that process and sort of articulate that dynamic, but also to have alternatives. And to raise a provocative final thought, maybe there is a fundamental truth, actually. Maybe I'll lay claim to a fundamental truth, which is Herman Daly's fundamental truth, which is that the economy is a wholly owned subsidiary of nature. And that is the closure of all closures, potentially, in the sense that in order to stay in the game, we need a form of political economic debate that takes that fundamental truth immensely seriously and rebuilds political and economic and social narratives based on the idea that we need to regenerate nature in order to have any kind of debate at all.
Yeah, agreed.
So, Hilary, I think you ought to say something back to that, because we seem to have snuck a fundamental objective truth back in right at the end. Have you any reply to that?
Yeah, it's very sneaky to do it, sort of way.
Well, I think that all people who have strong political views, from whichever direction you might hold them, are tempted by the idea of claiming that their account is true. Every tyrant has believed that their version is true. One of the strangeness is that there are many people who want to argue in favour of objective truth, but they don't seem to have much agreement between them of what they think that objective truth is. The Pope, the one that resigned, said that the attack on objective truth was absolutely fundamentally problematic because it undermined all belief. Scientists or philosophers of science sometimes want to say, no, it's the scientific account of the world which is the route to the truth. Politically, you have Liz Truss was a great defender of objective truth. She was deeply critical of the way that postmodernism was undermining beliefs that people had. But then on the other side, you have Marxists who see this as being objective truth, as being a fundamental problem for their outlook. Well, surely we just take the consequence of that, realizing everyone who's got a view about what they want to, how to change the world, will tell you that they've worked out the truth. And be very careful of every one of them. Be very careful of every one of them. And we need to constantly remember that at the same time as seeking to improve our accounts of the world, observing the ways that they don't work, observing how we might change them. Let me take your way of, within classical economics, it doesn't work in this way. What can we do about it? Is there anything we can do about it? Maybe we can't. Maybe you think, actually, this just doesn't work, this overall framework. We need another one. And if there's another one, let's examine that. Let's use our empiricism and rationality to examine our models. I think that one of the fundamental problems of the current time is that because of this awareness of perspective, there's increasing questioning of empiricism and rationality, as if these techniques of the Enlightenment were supporters of prejudice and hierarchy and authority, which of course they have been. But the solution is not to give up the strategies of empiricism and rationalism. It's to give up the idea that they bring you to truth. Empiricism and rationalism is how we improve our models, how we improve our closures. And far from giving up on those, we need to double down on those. And if someone's got to say, look at it like this, well, let's challenge what we say. Let's say, how does it fit with this? How does it tie in with that other view of you? We apply that, but we give up the idea that we might arrive. Every model that we have in the world is going to fail. And it's going to fail because it's not the same thing as the stuff out there. It's a way of holding it.
I still feel that there is quite a clear distinction being made here, because I just think that what Hilary's saying is that we've got to somehow become quite comfortable with giving up some of our own authority as intellectuals, in order to really come to terms with plurality. Robin, how do you feel about that?
Well, Hilary is sketching a theory of knowledge, which I completely agree on as an abstract model. And the way that you describe it, that's fine. How I'm presenting what comes after postmodernism is as a philosopher of culture and a cultural analysis. And for me, it is precisely that this position in the debate can now be made by you is a symptom of a very broad discussion that is going on in philosophy, but also in political theory, and is also mirroring all kinds of debates and discussion that are questioning our dominant ways of thinking about the world, as we have done for, let's say, the 45 years that you are describing.
To continue watching this video, click the link in the top left or in the description below.
With a free trial, you can enjoy the full talk and thousands more.
Thank you for being part of the conversation.